Welcome to the Laverne Church of the Brethren's weekly audio message. Here at the Laverne Church of the Brethren, we create a Christian community called by Christ to be inclusive, caring, and peace-minded. We affirm that people of any race, ethnic identity, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, age, economic status, faith tradition, or life situation are welcome in our congregation. We believe in compassionate service, stewardship of creation, respect for diversity, and nonviolent reconciliation for differences among all people, nations, and faith traditions. We claim no creed but the New Testament as exemplified by the life of Christ. We strive to follow the way of Jesus. And through these efforts, we seek to grow ever closer to the mind and heart of God. And now let us ground ourselves as we enter into today's message.
Hear now these words of Scripture from Micah 4, 3-5. He shall judge between many peoples and shall arbitrate between strong nations far away. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not rise up swords against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. But they shall all sit under their own vines and under their own fig trees, and no one shall make them afraid. For the mouth of the Lord of hosts has spoken. For all the peoples walk, each in the name of its God, but we will walk in the name of the Lord our God forever and ever.
You may say that I am a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And I hope that someday you will join us and the world will live as one. Words of John Lennon that continue to resonate and dwell in our hearts and souls. Words that speak to a time like this. Are you a dreamer? Or let me ask it a slightly different way. Do you dream while you sleep? And if so, what happens in your dreams? For me, sometimes my dreams take me on adventures and travel. At other times, I process what's happened during the day, especially if I had a difficult encounter. And so I replay in my mind the tape again and again of that conversation, trying to sort out what happened and to learn from that experience. Now, sometimes that dream feels like I've been judged. And so those words echo in my mind, much like a nightmare. Now, sometimes I dream about the sermon I'm writing. My mind shifts through the questions and the ideas and the quotes that I've encountered in my studies. And on occasions as I dream, a nugget emerges. It helps me to organize and solidify the sermon that I'm preparing. And so I wake up with a fresh idea to write down, or I'm encouraged to rewrite something I had already written. No, John Lennon is not the only one who can dream. See, we're all dreamers. We're all dreamers. Were you aware that God dreams? I wonder what God dreams about. Have you ever pondered that thought? In our second reading in the Hebrew Bible from Micah 4, verses 3-5, The prophet articulates God's dream, a dream that holds up peace and safety and religious liberty as a model for human relationships. Now, when I read about this dream, I have to confess that I'm struggling a bit with it at the moment. It feels like a dream that's been shattered. And as I lament the current day events, I wonder if it will ever be possible again for all people, all humanity, to sit under their own fig trees and no one shall make them afraid. I wonder, is it possible? And as I wonder, there's a longing deep within me that I want to dream again that this is true, that it can be. You know, that verse reminds me of the times when we gather out in the courtyard under the canopy, in the shade and comfort of God's presence and the presence of one another, and are drawn closer together, enjoying each other's humanity and company. I want to dream again. In a similar spirit of the prophet Micah, Desmond Tutu, in his book entitled God Has a Dream, a Vision of Hope for Our Time, describes his understanding of God's dream. And this is what he writes. I have a dream, God says. Please help me realize it. It is a dream of a world whose ugliness and squalor and poverty, its war and hostility, its greed and harsh competitiveness, its alienation and disharmony are changed into their glorious counterparts, when there will be more laughter, joy, and peace, when there will be justice and goodness and compassion and love and caring and sharing. I have a dream that swords will be beaten into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks, and that my children will know that they are members of one family, the human family, God's family, my family. Tutu goes on to declare, in God's family, there are no outsiders. No outsiders. All are insiders, black and white, rich and poor, gay and straight, Jew and Arab, Palestinian and Israeli, Roman Catholic and Protestant, Serb and Albanian, Hutu and Tutsi, Muslim and Christian, Buddhist and Hindu, Pakistani and Indian. All belong. That's God's dream, that all belong. You know, I have to confess that sometimes I'm ready to just throw my arms up and throw the towel in. And then I read and hear Tutu's description of God's dream and recognize that Desmond Tutu lived through and provided leadership amidst the challenges of apartheid. And when that settles in, my hope is rekindled. If he can do it, so can I. So can we. We can dream again. You know, the plea from God, please help me realize it, is a call to action, a call to hope, a call to rebellion, as Sister Anna was described. It's a reminder that the Holy One is with us that the Holy One walks with us. That God's dream is the dream to believe in amidst the chaos and the conflict. That chaos does not have the last word, but God's word. God's dream will have final say. The early Anabaptists were also dreamers. In fact, Anabaptists were among the pioneers who first thought of religious tolerance and who gave words to their convictions by appealing to authorities in the church and the state to grant liberty of faith to all. In 1527, Hans Dink offered this commentary on Micah as a defense of his understanding of peace and faith that made room for others. He believed such a security will exist in outward things with the practice of the true gospel, that each will let the other move and dwell in peace, be Turk or heathen, believing what he or she will, through and in the land, by not submitting to the magistrate in matters of faith. Is there anything more to be desired? I stand fast on what the prophet says here. Everyone among all people may move around in the name of his or her God. That is to say, no one shall deprive another, whether heathen or Jew or Christian, but rather allow everyone to move in all territories in the name of his or her God, so we may benefit in the peace which God gives. The Anabaptists were dreamers. Now, it's unfortunate or regrettable that Hans Dink and the Anabaptist vision for religious freedom didn't take root right away. It was another 100 years. It wasn't until the 17th century in England and the 18th century in France that religious liberty was granted and became acceptable. But despite the turmoil of their day, the Anabaptists persisted. They dreamed. For them, religious persecution, political indifference wasn't the final word. They dreamed and believed in the vision of God's dream, as articulated in Micah 4. During children's time, Jamie shared with you the story of two modern-day Anabaptists. Anna Mao, who happens to be Church of the Brethren, and some of you may recognize her name, and maybe even met her. And Edna Ruth Byler from the Mennonite tradition. They both were dreamers. And I want to share further aspects of their story, because they dreamed and believed in the dignity of people. As a missionary in India, Anna Mao leaned into and embodied her dream of fairness and equity. She was in India during the time of Indian independence movement that was led by Gandhi. So it wasn't fully a peaceful time. It was a time of turmoil. But Anna resonated with Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence and his wish to do away with the caste system. See, Anna firmly believed in the Church of the Brethren's Anabaptist value of nonviolence, as well as the dignity of all human beings. Anna's approach of living out this vision and dream can best be explained through the eyes of a child who describes Anna's arrival in her Indian village. She states, "We children were excited and waited eagerly for her visit. The day came And we started arguing with each other as to who would be the first to give a cup of water. The bullock cart arrived, and the two of you got off the cart and shook hands with my mother and father while we children were staring at you gawk-eyed. And then suddenly you did the unexpected. Instead of walking away to my father's office, you two came towards us and started shaking hands with us and asking us our names. And then while Reverend Mal talked with my father, you, Mrs. Mal, gathered us up and we went into the kitchen where my mom had been preparing food. And there you washed your hands, drank some water, and sat down with my mother to help her. And while helping her, you engaged with us children by asking questions, collecting personal information from each of us, and then you offered to bring your own children back with you the next time so we could play with them. That story has a certain poignancy to it for me because there's another story that tells of another missionary couple that came to the village. The children were so excited to welcome and greet them, but when the missionaries got there, instead of talking and greeting with the children, they turned and went into the house with the adults, and the children were left holding a cup of water. Can you imagine their spirits? And then to have Anna Mal and Baxter arrive and to greet them face to face and ask their names. A rebellion of kindness. What a gift. Anna's dream and practice of ministry embodied love and respect that valued children and made an indelible mark on everyone who met her. Anna Mal was one of the first women to be ordained in the Church of the Brethren. She was an Anabaptist dreamer and visionary. What a blessing. I was also intrigued to learn of Edna Ruth Byler from the Mennonite tradition. And I want to share just a bit of her story. She humbly and profoundly proclaims, "I'm just a woman trying to help other women." She too had a dream that it involved a single action that made a profound difference in the lives of women in Puerto Rico and around the world. In 1946, Edna visited Puerto Rico, and there she saw firsthand the power of poverty. Hard-working women were unable to provide for their children. This struck a chord in Edna because she too had experienced the Depression in the U.S. and knew the power and grasp of poverty on one's life. But the other thing that Edna noticed as she was with the women in Puerto Rico was that they embroidered exquisite textiles, but they didn't have a market to sell them in. So Edna paid them a fair price, brought these fabrics home, and from her car trunk, sold them to friends and neighbors, and told the story of these women in Puerto Rico. She shared their dream. And from selling textiles from the trunk of a car, the global fair trade movement of 10,000 villages was born. I think many of you are aware of 10,000 villages, maybe even purchased something from them. It's also sort of the counterpart to the Church of the Brethren effort of SERVE, fair trade, that empowers and lifts up struggling artisans. Both Anna and Edna had dreams that were grounded in compassion, service, mutual aid, empowerment, and peacemaking. Given the state of our world, I dare say we all agree that we need dreamers to rise up, to stand up, to speak up, and to shout out and act out, proclaiming God's dream that all belong. All belong.
We're so glad that you listened to the message today. If you're looking for an open and affirming, peace-loving, and justice-seeking congregation, consider visiting us for in-person worship on Sundays at 9:30 a.m. We'd love to meet you.